You don't see managing partners, no offense, as human beings. I don't.
Honestly, that is the most powerful thing you can do.
I would say that big law is super political.
Everyone was so desperate to please and impress whoever they were working for all the time because they wanted to progress.
So I'm not going to try and impress a manager or something. I'm just going to just do what I do.
Not to say you at all are in the wrong here. Most associates won't do it. They're too afraid.
How would you say people should improve their emotional intelligence?
You need to start valuing yourself and realise that actually you have got something to offer. You've been hired. And I'll say to them, well, you need to get the big dogs on side.
Why do you think that working in law is like playing House of Cards?
Under my desk, I would always have my heeled court shoes, my suit. A lot of people were very jealous of me, especially when I kept getting promoted. You're going to have problems if you're somebody who shines brightly, and you just give the backstabbers a wide berth as much as possible.
So Helen, you know when we recorded the first ever podcast episode on my podcast, you said to be a good lawyer, you've got to do X, can't remember the answer. And then the next bit was, and watch House of Cards. So I want to throw it back to you. Why do you think that working in law is like playing House of Cards or House of Cards? And why is it so like political? And what's your experiences?
So I suppose just to be clear there, I'm not talking about like playing rummy on your family holiday or go fish or something like that. I suppose I was alluding to the slightly more Machiavellian themed House of Cards, which was, I think, originally a book and made into a series, perhaps in the 1980s, which was more recently made into, is it Netflix or whatever the one, it's with Kevin Spacey, although he's been booted off now. The point of the House of Cards kind of paradigm is this idea of, it's very political, it's smoke and mirrors. What appears to be going on the surface is not actually really what's happening. And I think what we have to understand is that law is essentially a people business. It's all about people. People is its beginning, people is its end. That's how it works. That's why the law firms will all be talking about the war on talent. We need the best lawyers to deliver the best outcomes, all the rest of it. So when we have that in mind, along with the world of finance and all sorts of corporations, actually to do well, you have to know how to manage people. That means below you, that means upwards. It means thinking about your reputation. It means getting the recognition of the right people. It means being in the good books of the right people. It means making the right impressions. It means just being in the right place at the right time as much as possible. So with all of that in mind, actually, you'll probably go further if you do all of that with an awful lot of intention. Because if you think one day, doesn't matter what your ambitions are, I'm just using this as a hypothetical example, I want to be senior partner in X team, you're going to have to work out all of the people who you will have to get on the right side of, internally and externally, to make that happen. If you have no awareness of that at all, you won't make it.
It's very interesting you say that, because it's only now when I talk to you and I talk to other people on the podcast and stuff where I'm actually realizing that law is quite a political and people driven, in that sense, industry. And I never realized this. And I don't know whether it was me being naive or whether I just didn't want to fall into that. And I think also another thing was, when you're in school and nobody likes the teacher's pet, that like carried on for me into law. It was like nobody likes the teacher's pet, so I'm not going to try and impress a manager or something. I'm just going to just do what I do. I'm not going to like go OTT, to do so. But it's interesting that you say that, and it does seem to be a very strategic way of getting promotions and getting kind of where you want to be in law. And I guess that's what you kind of mentioned, to get in partnership, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that you kind of took that approach of I don't want to be teacher's pet, because the thing is, once you leave school, actually, it doesn't matter too much. I suppose, look, it does matter a bit what your peers think, in the sense of if you're caring about, okay, I don't want to give this impression amongst my peers, or I don't want people to think I'm too big for my boots or whatever. And by the way, I wouldn't say any of those particularly great mindsets. But, if you're thinking like that, that's really going to stunt your progress, because you're caring more about, people who are potentially trying to keep you small rather than stepping into your power. So I'm curious about that, because in the sorts of firms I worked at, it was just so high achieving. Everyone was so desperate to please and impress whoever they were working for all the time, because they wanted to progress, they wanted the promotion, they wanted the top appraisal grade. I saw people in floods of tears when they didn't get the appraisal grades they wanted, or maybe they got a negative comment. Like, actually doing well constantly was so important to, I would say, the vast majority of people. Yeah, I'm just surprised that for you, actually, you're like, I don't care that much about impressing my manager.
I think I think it comes from, in the beginning, I was so like trying hard. I tried as hard as I could. I did extra stuff, like for example, so let's say my job was in personal injury, taking on initial claims, etc., speaking to clients, writing reports, all this stuff. Then I did extra things like one of my colleagues, so I was the only person in the office who could speak Spanish. And one of my colleagues comes over who had never spoken to before and was like, I've got this report from Spanish police because someone's had an accident abroad. Can you translate it for me into English so I can understand it? Because in Spain, it's like it's either in Spanish or that's it. Like, we're not translating stuff for you. I was like, yeah, of course, like no probs. So I would come in, I came in earlier to go through this report, translate it, make it into, good English. And then I went back and gave it to her, and my manager knew about this. She was like reading it, and I was like watching her reading it in case she had any questions. And she was just like, that's weird they would say that. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay. And like wasn't bothered. It wasn't like, thank you so much for coming in earlier because you had other work going on, so you didn't have time to do it in your normal work day. My manager didn't acknowledge it. It was like nothing. And I felt like things like this happened where nothing was being acknowledged. So it was like, well, what's the point? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's the point? Nothing's being mentioned. It's not going in favor of me. And I just felt like everyone around me was trying to achieve stuff, trying to get promotions, and nobody like me was getting promotions, so I thought it's potentially not achievable then. It was mainly, I would say, like either older people or guys, young guys getting the promotions, so I thought it's not something that I can get.
Gosh, that's so interesting. So I suppose that this is probably a whole topic in itself, so I don't want to digress too much off our topic, but you sort of obviously felt, well, first of all, I find it interesting that I just, not to say you at all were in the wrong here, I just find it interesting. So I had such a different feeling way back in the day, and I think it's all changed a lot with Gen Z coming through now. But that whole idea of being thanked for what you do, I didn't expect a thanks. I mean, if I was just, like whipped around a bit, that was fine. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't expect anything close to working hours. I had no expectations of, if someone was nice to me, that was an added bonus, but there was no expectation of, leaving at any particular time or having a thank you. I mean, it was nice if you got one, not to say people didn't give them, but you know what I mean? It wasn't something that
Mm.
upset me. I think the world is a different place now from 2013, but I just find that's interesting that was something where you're like, hold on a minute, which probably you should feel like that, but
I know, I know. I don't know. I just think because it took so much effort and I was the only person who could help her in this particular situation, it was just
Mm.
like, what the hell? But I don't know. You are right, you shouldn't expect the thanks, but also how sad is that though? People, it should be like a supportive environment
Yeah,
where people are saying thank you for stuff. If people did stuff for me, I'd be so thankful for it. But anyway, that's just another topic anyway.
yeah, it is, and I'm really interested by the fact as well that actually in your firm you felt as though there was no point really pushing yourself because you wouldn't get the promotion anyway. But equally, I feel like that's also a different topic from today. So I think we should definitely circle back to that one, I reckon.
Yeah.
But do you think on this particular topic, would it be worth us going to some of the ways that perhaps, I don't know, law is a bit like House of Cards, or how you could potentially leverage your career through, I suppose it's emotional intelligence, really, but
Hmm.
to get better outcomes for yourself.
I think you're more knowledgeable on the topic than me since I didn't try to do any of those things, like please other people. But yeah, go on. I'd love to hear it.
Well, I don't know. What's really interesting is I think I spent just years being like this. I didn't even realize I was deliberately doing it. And I think it comes from just years and years and years of being a bit of a hustler. From the youngest age, I mean, from about 13 years old, I always had jobs, and you name it, I've done that job probably. I've washed dishes, done paper rounds, worked in restaurants, worked in nightclubs, like honestly, bars, ice cream shops, you name it. Because of that, I think because from a young age I had to earn money, I had to, I don't know, I suppose look after myself, but also be successful in different contexts or survive or thrive in different contexts. I got very, very good at reading the room. And by that, I mean reading, for example, where the power is, where the power lies, who is actually the puppet master in different situations, who you need to get on side, who's really important, who's less important. So for me, if I had 10 people trying to give me work and all saying they wanted me to do whatever, and I didn't have time to do it all, I'd always be thinking in the back of my mind, well, who do I actually need to impress here? You can't go burn your bridges with everyone else, but you have to think about, actually, if I have to prioritize here, who do I need to get on side? And it would even be thinking about small things. Like I'd always get into the office early in the morning, like 7 a.m., because just how I rolled for quite a lot of it. I was a morning person. And I knew at my firm, like, the managing partner would be in early, and I'd always make a point of going down to her office and just poking my head around the door and saying, hello, how are you? How are your grandkids or whatever, having a chat. And I didn't do it in any kind of sort of manipulative way or anything, but it was just me knowing that that was the way to build a relationship with her, on a more personal level. She would have been busy all day. I wouldn't have seen her. And I also wanted her to know that I was there early in the morning. It was also the way that with some partners throughout my career, for better or for worse, rightly or wrongly, they were old school and they liked it when you wore a full suit jacket, and say heeled shoes. This is probably controversial, but that's what they liked. They were old school. So under my desk, I would always have my heeled court shoes, my suit. So every single time I went to their office, that's what I would wear. I'd brush my hair, I'd wear my suit, I'd put my heels on, because I knew that that's what would impress them. So I think on some level, I was just always thinking like this. How do I impress? Who do I need to get on side? Who do I need to have buy-in from? How do I connect with more people? How do I make sure I'm networked across lots of different departments in different ways? I think it was just always on my mind.
Wow, I think that's very clever, you know. That would never have occurred to me. Like if I came in early, which I used to do as well, I think there's no way I would have just popped my head around the managing partner's office and been like, "Hey," because I would have felt like they would have thought, "Who the hell is this and what does she want?" You know, like that I was kind of imposing on their space. So it's interesting that we both have different perspectives on that.
I think that's a really key point, actually, because so I speak to a lot of clients who are probably at the mid-level associate stage or even more senior than that, and they say, "How do I make an impression? How do I get that partnership promotion, that senior associate promotion, or whatever else?" And I'll say to them, "Well, you need to get the big dogs on side. So the only way you're going to do that is by connecting with them, and people connect with people. Your work persona, this sort of, edgy, slightly scared self, is not going to connect with anyone.
Mm, yeah.
You need to sort of start valuing yourself and realize that actually you have got something to offer. You've been hired, you're there for a reason, you're a decent human being, and this is just another human being in front of you. You find the common ground and you connect. Why are you laughing?
Because you don't see managing partners, no offense, as human beings. I don't anyway. Well, I didn't.
That's the whole thing as well, but that they are, at the end of the day, they might be slightly scary at work, but I think it's seeing through that. And I'll often say to clients, if they start a new job, all the people who interviewed you, reach out to them before you started and ask them individually for a coffee. Start deepening and creating those relationships before
Hmm.
you even get there. Most associates won't do it, they're too afraid. Honestly, that is the most powerful thing you can do. And at some stage, you just have to get over yourself. If you're going to be a great networker and really successful, You have to just have the confidence to speak to people. So the best way to do it is to just start speaking to them.
I think that's the biggest tip you could actually give, you know? Like, offer them a cup of tea. "Oh, I'm just making a tea, do you want one?"
You
Classic.
and tea, Holly. You and tea. Yeah, but what shade of brown? For
We're not
anyone
going
who
into
doesn't have this reference to Water Cooler episode 1, Holly Holly is a bit of a tea connoisseur.
I wanna hop into the comments. We've got one
Yeah, yeah. Let's do it.
saying, "Biggest discovery for me in Big Law was the importance of office politics. However, I tried to take a step back and saw that going OTT, if it was pleasing a partner, was not well received by the rest of the team. This is my point. Maybe something more diplomatic, hard work plus good relationships with strong limits and grace, even with the worst people, might work." This is my exact point. It was the if I'm like being OTT, like, oh, hi, to someone else, people are going to see right through that. And then my colleagues on my level are not going to like me for this. This is my feeling. What do you think, Helen?
Yeah, so I think this is a really important one, actually. First of all, I'm not saying be insincere. You actually just being a nice human being and popping your head into someone's office and asking them how their evening was, it doesn't have to be insincere. You can just ask them, just like you would, the lady in the cafeteria, just like you might the cleaner, whatever. I'm just saying, have that human touch, that warmth, that human connection. You don't need to be an arse, whatever. You don't need to go that far. That never looks good. But just show that warmth, because that's how you create connection. I have a second point, which is just as important. Not everyone is going to like you. Not everyone in my career liked me. A lot of people were very jealous of me, especially when I kept getting promoted. Something you have to live with. Think carefully about politics, because actually you don't want to piss off certain people who are potentially people who feed into the senior people. You have to be very careful about these moves, because then you create maybe some bad reputation around yourself, and that feeds back, and that could be negative. But at the
Hmm.
same time, if you start doing well and management like you, some people won't like you. It's the trade-off. And this is where it's house of cards. You have to pick. You
Right,
have to
right.
pick, what outcome do you want? Because you're not going to keep everyone happy, but you always be
Hmm.
nice to everyone, you always be kind, and you just keep, give the backstabbers a wide berth as much as possible, or try not to work with them. But
Hmm.
no one's going to, you're going to have problems if you're somebody who shines brightly. That's just a rule of this world. I have problems with that now. People trying to knock me down and tell me, oh, I shouldn't be saying what I'm saying on LinkedIn, and oh, do I think I'm so good because I've got a big following? Don't care. They're not my people. But you have to reach that point, right?
Yeah, 100% agree. I want to bring up Gabriel's comment. I would say that Big Law is super political. The stages I found were recognizing that making a conscious decision to play the game and then hopefully playing it well. What really helped was advising on disputes between partners.
I wonder,
Interesting.
I wonder what you mean, Gabriel, when you're saying what really helped was advising on disputes between partners, because that's a bit of an interesting one.
Well,
And I think,
basically, I think Gabriel, although you can chip in Gabriel, but he sorted out disputes between partners. So he then got a deeper understanding of knowing how disputes cropped up. He investigated them and whatnot. Then he got an idea of how they come about and what it involves, and therefore how actually political it is, not only on surface level, but on a deeper level as well.
and I think you see, I think this is something you gain knowledge of in a more certain way as you get more senior. Like, it seems like Gabriel really had the sort of inside scoop on what was going on. And of course, most juniors would never know that there are so many of those politics. There are all sorts of politics there. It's, personality clashes, power play. A lot of it will come down to money, who's bringing in the money, who isn't, especially if it's a kind of lockstep partnership where everybody's, getting X amount dependent on their level of equity. So there can be a lot of that at play. And I think what's also key about what Gabriel says is making a conscious decision to play the game and then hopefully playing it well. It comes from a place of consciousness. You can't do this without intention or consciousness.
It's actually interesting because I was having a conversation with Gabriel this week because we recorded a podcast episode, and he was saying that a lot of the disputes between partners comes down to personality clashes, which I think is very, very interesting. But yeah, he was saying a lot of the things that you say about it being very political, and you've got to be, people like other people based off of like no information, no evidence. It's like, I like this associate for no random reason, but I really like them, so I want to promote them. And that's, he was saying stuff like that happens, which is very interesting.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. Actually, if you're really clever, that there is reason behind it. There is always reason behind it, even if it's just you went to the same school as me, or I like the way that you can see certain personalities are going to like other certain personalities. So that's what I'm saying. If you've got a high level of emotional intelligence, you can mold yourself to be likable to a lot of different people, even if you're not that much like them. You're just very good. I'm not saying be a narcissist. They're really good at this too, by the way. But you can come from a place of integrity and be really good with people. That's why I'm saying I wouldn't have been there in heels and a suit jacket all the time. I knew that would please and impress certain people who are then going to back me for promotion and whatever else. So it's not a random occurrence. It's not totally random. Some people will never like you. Some people will just love you. But there's a huge grey area of all the other people in between. Who, it's up to you to try your best to impress them, and that's where it's worth doing the work on yourself. I think I'm noticing as well that Gabriel said he's added another comment to what he said there, just to show that he said giving legal advice as counsel to partners in other law firms on partnership moves, restrictive covenants. That makes sense. Okay, right. So what he's saying there is it wasn't necessarily within his own firm, which I thought would be slightly
No.
more unusual, but to as sort of legal counsel to partners in other firms, so he'd be able to see all of the politics that was going on, which is super, super interesting. Oh, do you know what? That's
Yeah.
worth being a lawyer for. I almost feel
That's
like
the
I should be a
coolest job. I would love to have that job. Like, that would be a dream for me. That would be like the most fun thing ever.
it would, but then you'd also just deal with partners in law firms all the time, which I think could get a bit old as well.
Yeah, I'd do it for like a few months, I think. Maybe I should just do an internship or something. But
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Helen. So you're saying it's all about making the right moves, knowing the right people, getting in with the right people, being emotionally intelligent. How would you say people should improve their emotional intelligence?
So your emotional intelligence is essentially your awareness of yourself and your awareness of other people. Okay. So it's really doing that personal development on work on yourself. I think first of all, becoming really interested in personal development, personal growth is really helpful. You can listen to so many podcasts on it now, get you to be introspective, self-reflective, think about yourself, how your mind works, give you different perspectives, all of that kind of thing. But really the way to really deepen that is, I would say, through therapy. That's a brilliant way because that causes you to challenge your thought patterns, your thought processes, to understand your trauma, understand how you tick the way that you tick, like why you are the way you are. It helps you understand other people better. It starts to help you understand psychology in a really deep way. I mean, if you really start to study it, I trained as a therapist, right? But I can see in people straight away from talking to them for 10 minutes, I can already tell you a lot of what their patterning is. I can tell you probably some of their trauma. I can predict for you certain things are going to happen. I'm looking at the way they're talking to me, their body language, whether they're looking me in the eye. I can tell you so much about a person in 10 minutes.
Oh,
And
that
that
is
comes from,
scary.
yeah, it's bloody scary. I mean, I
Yes.
don't sit there analyzing people, but it's an amazing skill if you've got it. It's amazing. So you learn that depth of self-awareness, learn that awareness of others. So you could probably learn that to a certain extent in therapy. You can also probably study psychology, you could study therapy. I'd also say you can do things like coaching. Coaching's brilliant for this. I mean, I use all of this in my work now as a coach, and you can go away on retreats, you can do meditation, like all of those kind of things really help you understand the workings of your mind and your brain, so you see it on a deeper level, and you start to realize that, look, everybody's just living out their own patterns all the time. If you've got that depth of understanding, like, okay, so that person behaved a bit like that, their body language is a bit away from me even though they're being nice towards me, So why is there this coldness? Are they not comfortable in my presence? Do they not like me? Let me test that. If I catch them unaware one moment and go, oh, hi, Paul, good morning, that split second, that's the moment they're not expecting me to say that. So if I'm met with a coldness, which then turns into a fake smile, I know they're not that warm towards me. If it's straight away, oh, good morning, Helen. Okay, that person's cool with me. I'm not saying I sit there thinking this all in a conscious way all the time, but the more and more and more work you do like this, you pick it up all the time. You're thinking, what is my relationship with this person? How could it be better? How are they thinking?
I think also if you're in a firm, and this is what I did, if I really wanted to strategically get in with the right people, I would be, and this is what I did anyway, I gathered information, but like I'd be being very observant, I'd be watching what's going on, I'd be listening to conversations, I'd be having conversations with different people and listening to what they say. Because I think a lot of the time people just talk, 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 and not many people actually listen. But for me, I was just like taking in all this information. Okay, what is this person like? What's going on with this person? What's this person going through? And you take it all in, and you then base decisions off the information that you have.
And that's exactly it. And I think it's so powerful what you just said there about listening. Like, honestly, just stop talking. Half the time, just stop talking. You don't need to be talking. Your voice is just filling space. Like, just watch everything. You know, like when you're watching animals in the wilderness and, you just sit there and you watch. Like, if you just sit in an office for a day and really watch people, you'll be able to see who likes who doesn't like who's saying to what. And I think we're not very good listeners. That's a skill you can massively improve on as well, like how to be a good active listener. And, don't give away all your secrets and don't trust people too quickly or too easily, because that can be held against you as well.
Basically, play House of Cards.
Exactly. Play House of Cards.
Thanks so much, everyone, for coming. And don't forget to go over to More Than a Lawyer, where the episodes are going to be released from now on.
Thanks, guys, and see you all very soon.
Thank you.